Hello there. Christmas Day is drawing closer, as all of us know, and that means that we are still in the season of Advent, of looking forward to Jesus' birth and pondering what that means for our world today, living with a sense of anticipation, of wondering, of reflecting. And as we do that today, I want to draw attention to the shepherds. The shepherds are well known characters in the story of Jesus' birth in the Gospel of Luke. And many of us are familiar with the shepherds. Perhaps we played a shepherd in a Christmas pageant sometime in the past. Perhaps we have children doing that. In the Gospel of Luke in chapter 2, it says this about the shepherds. In that region, there were shepherds living in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. Sometimes I wonder if we really think about what the shepherds were doing before the announcement of Jesus' birth came to them. They were out in the fields, away from society, out in the loneliness, in the darkness of the fields, away from the city at night. And they were keeping watch over flocks, a very mundane, dirty job, not a job that very many people wanted. And I wonder if the shepherds were even thinking about God. Were they thinking about the idea that there would be a Savior that would be born for them? Was it even on their radar that God would send them a Savior? Was it even on their radar that they were even worthy for God to announce the birth of a Savior to them first? Of all people, Luke's gospel says that the announcement went to the shepherds first. To the people who were out away from all of the busyness of the city, to people who were doing jobs that were mundane, not really high priority jobs, not really flashy jobs, jobs that were pretty much ignored by everyone else. And maybe they felt ignored by God. I wonder, in that mindset, how much of a surprise it would have been that an angel of the Lord would come to them. That the idea that God would make an announcement to them personally, that a Savior would be born for them. And I wonder, as we reflect on Advent and the meaning of Jesus' birth, if we really take that to heart, that the announcement of God's presence came to the most unlikely people, the shepherds. To people who may not even been thinking about it, yet God shows up. And I wonder about our lives, about your life, about mine. How often we identify with the shepherds, but how often we don't really follow the rest of the story in Luke to read that God came to them first. Maybe you're in a state where you identify with the shepherds, or maybe you just think God is too important for you, or that you're not worthy enough to be noticed by God. The shepherd's story tells us otherwise. That out in the fields, in the loneliness, in the darkness, away from everyone else, doing work that no one cares about, that's exactly where God came first. And that's what Advent reminds us of, that the coming of God into our world doesn't demand that we have everything together, and that doesn't demand that we're in the middle of all of the activity to notice it. In fact, the coming of God, Advent tells us, comes to the places of darkness, comes to the places of loneliness, comes to the places where it's least expected. And it might surprise you. So be reminded today, as we reflect on Jesus' birth this Advent, that God will show up where you least expect it, in the moments and in the places where you think are least worthy. That's where God shows up. Sometimes we have it the other way around and we miss it. Be on the lookout today, because God still shows up in your life and in mine. Happy Advent. We'll see you soon.